My goal in life is to be synonymous with the word hire. When somebody wants to hire, I want the whole world to say, oh, you got to go read Kasim's book. I hope they're not a sponsor of the show or anything, Troy. I'm not trying to lob any grenades.
Not anymore.
Okay, good. Yeah, I just ruined that relationship, didn't I? I was raised by a blind single mother on Social Security disability in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And what's really interesting about welfare babies is they're really trust fund babies. I was cared for and funded by the U.S. government Social Security office. So you take that same single mom and you let her work from home on a semi-flexible schedule and you pay her more than she'd ever make domestically. That has anthropological significance. When mom is home, teen pregnancy drops, teen drug use drops, teen gang involvement drops, right? Like that is massive, it's huge. So I do what I call fly traps. I actually just had an applicant complain about this to me. And everything he said in his complaint was exactly why I do it. It was so funny. He's like, if you have this many steps in your hiring process, people are going to drop off. And I'm like, I do know that. Yeah, it's exactly what I want, dude. Like gold star to you.
Welcome to the HRIS Careers podcast with your host, Troy Wallace, a podcast for human resources information systems professionals to help you elevate your HRIS career. We always say no one gets into HRIS on purpose, but it sure is interesting to find out how they did. We interview your HRIS peers to find out how they got tricked into the industry and what lessons and tools they use to progress their careers along the way. We discuss industry trends, AI, and even talk candidly about all the most popular HRIS platforms. Just think of it as the closest bar just outside the entrance of your favorite HR technology conference. Now you get it. Welcome in.
Welcome to the HRIS Careers podcast, broadcasting live, and this is becoming quite a tradition from the spare bedroom in my mother's house in Las Vegas, Nevada. So I'm out here for the HR Tech Conference. I'm actually headed out here in about 90 minutes to the bar crawl. Some interesting developments in me getting in and getting a ticket that hopefully we'll get it ironed out, but I may have an interesting story to tell you in my summary session here in a couple of weeks when I release that episode. But I hate to rush things out, but I interviewed Kasim Aslam, who I'm just going to say is one of the smartest humans that I've ever met. He is a serial entrepreneur. It's a guy I met 15 plus years ago. So I was the HR technology director for Republic Services in Phoenix, Arizona. If you're familiar with the area, there's a Lifetime Fitness right across the parking lot. And I played noon basketball over there, and so did Kasim. And the one thing I will say about Kasim, you just can't give him baseline. He's about 6'3". You give him baseline, he had this nice little scoop reverse layup that he would put on you. He has gone on to be a serial entrepreneur. He has had 8-figure exit with his company Solutions 8 that actually his predecessor to Solutions 8 developed my website way back in the day. And he's just been someone who is a consummate visionary in technology, and he seems to be 1 or 2 steps ahead of everybody else. So he initially started in web development. That's where I got to know him. He actually helped me build a couple little custom solutions for some companies, even though that HR or HRS was not his specialty. Solutions 8 went on to transform itself into the largest Google Ads agency in the country, actually maybe globally, and that's where he made his big exit. And now, and I'm very happy to see this, he has turned his attention to our world. He has started a company called Pareto Talent. That's Pareto, like Pareto's Law, talent.com. And Pareto Talent is developing a global network of high-level executive assistants. I think there are over 100 executive assistants already. So you can see them at Pareto Talent, PareToTalent.com. And through that journey, first with Solutions 8, hiring globally to staff that organization, and now with Pareto Talent. And I was really interested because this gave me a reason to have him on the podcast. He's written a book called Hire, How to Attract, Hire, and Manage the Best Remote Talent in the World. So the interesting thing about his book is he is giving it away for free. So it is thehirebook.com. So TheHirebook.com. And in addition to the book, it's about 115 pages, easy read, and it just goes through a step-by-step process of how he has, built a system to find this talent that I think is very applicable, whether you are in small business, or even in a global organization. So really a nice, fresh perspective. And within that package, in addition to the book, there are worksheets out there and templates, and it's a great free resource. I encourage you to head out and grab that. I think he just asked for an email address. So as part of this, we're going to do part 1 and part 2. I'm probably not doing it enough justice in this intro. But again, one of the smarter humans that I've honestly ever known. And I'm really excited to see, with his focused attention, what he does in this industry. So in part 1, we're going to focus on some nuts and bolts of how he runs his company. And then we'll do a part 2 where we wax a little philosophical about some different issues, and we dig deep. And 15 minutes of that was kind of off the record. I'm going to dig some things out of there for part 2 that I think we can publish. But so stay tuned for that. But anyways, without further ado, please enjoy this episode with Kasim Aslam of Pareto Talent. Kasim Aslam, welcome to the HRIS Careers podcast. We certainly appreciate you being here. Obviously, I've done your intro. People will know that we met on a basketball court probably more like 15 years ago. And you bailed me out of some interesting HR solution situations. So many things I want to get to today, but we'll start with something a little off. So I noticed when I put your name into Google, as soon as I put in Kasim, the first thing it comes up with is film director.
Yeah, I just need to go capture my Google panel, and I've neglected to do that. I wanted to be an actor. That's why I started my businesses. And that was a failed endeavor, but it, led me to entrepreneurship. So I think I'm pretty lucky in that.
I know you as being with Solutions 8, now Pareto Talent. You've exited a couple of companies in your tenure. So there was lots of other things that I thought would come up when I put your name into Google. And I was definitely surprised that was the first item to come up. But I will say, I think I did see one of your short films.
Oh, no.
10 or 15 years ago. And even back then, it was high quality. I was surprised by the quality of it.
That's kind of you. I try to hide those as much as I can. They've all been buried and put under lock and key. So there's only so much blackmail I can afford to have out there.
I get it. So couple things. So obviously HRIS, Human Resource Information Systems. So we're geeks about how do you pay people? How do you manage your human resources? And there's some connective tissue in a couple of your companies. Obviously Solutions 8, which ended up being one of the largest Google ads agencies in the world that you exited from, but have it at a very global footprint. And then now Pareto Talent, where you are helping people find executive assistants and have written a book, actually with the namesake Hire. Can we dig into Solutions 8 and then also Pareto Talent about what the stack looks like for performance management, hiring these people, getting them paid? Is this something that you found just the right solution out on the market and were able to buy that and you're up and running? Did you have to self-build some of these things? What does that look like?
Yeah, so it's extraordinarily difficult, to be honest with you. It's part of the reason that I think international hiring is so inaccessible to people. There doesn't feel like a one-size-fits-all plug-and-play solution. There's something out there called Deal.
Absolutely. We all know it well.
Okay, I didn't know how popular they were. We demoed it, and it was just, it wasn't for us, is all I'll say. Took a lot, offered a little as far as our particular needs. I hope they're not a sponsor of the show or anything, Troy. I'm not trying to lob any grenades.
Not anymore.
Okay, good. Yeah, I just ruined that relationship, didn't I? So we've built it from the ground up. We have a relational database built on Airtable, and we use that in order to manage everything that is a lever or a knob as it might relate to the human resources. So, for example, there are time horizons upon which people might get a raise, and that's handled in Airtable, and Airtable can be automated based off of that time. There's sometimes an employer might want to buy an employee a piece of equipment, and then that needs to be logged away and appended to that employee. If somebody's ascended, bought out, et cetera, all the things that might happen from an HR perspective. we've built custom automation for each of those events. And then the automation allows for tracking and reconciliation with our financial tools, which is just QuickBooks.
Right.
But I have found a custom relational database, and those are a bunch of words that I don't even really understand, to be honest with you. Solutions 8 had its own Airtable, and I'm not pushing Airtable, by the way. It has some limitations that piss me off, but I do like it better than the other tools that we've demoed. So, like, we've looked at, like, Grist and Smartsheet and those things, and Airtable's very accessible for a dummy like me.
Right.
That's been helpful. I don't think it's necessary for organizations that have maybe simpler employee stacks or, things that are a bit more linear, because I'm sure there's a bunch of tools off the shelf. You're going to know about all of them. I'm not going to know about any.
Right.
But because our positioning in the market really is so very unique. We're hiring a bunch of people in a bunch of different countries that all have different labor laws, different compliance requirements, different pay conduits. It's like this country can use Payoneer, but this country can only use Wise, and this country is accessible to both, but only in these particular instances. And then you have countries where employees actually prefer to be paid by U.S. bank accounts, which is very interesting. There are certain places where their economy is so uncertain that the people that have found a way to be functional are effectively operating fiscally outside of their own borders, and they have it's kind of a two-step process to getting money in, and you have to know how to navigate all those areas and when to do it and when not to. And so I have a very good international labor attorney that we just talk to on a semi-regular basis, and it's interesting because the rule, more or less, Troy, and you can tell me if you disagree with this, the rule more or less from international labor attorneys tends to be something like, you don't have to be compliant if you're in the US unless there's a trade agreement in place, which obviously is important. But if there's no trade agreement in place and you never plan on setting up an office in that country, so there's no trade agreement with Venezuela, obviously, and I never plan on going to Venezuela or setting up an office in Venezuela, and I don't plan on having an excess number of employees in Venezuela, like a tax relevant sum or,
Right.
And so what an international attorney might tell you, probably more or less off the record, is there are no compliance requirements for you, which is helpful and important because a country like Venezuela, which incidentally I actually don't hire out of, that's why I'm using them as an example.
Right.
It's more or less the wild, wild west. It's like, if you can get them the money, then hire like they're a contractor. And then in some countries, the burden of compliance is on the employee. And then in some countries, the burden of compliance is on you. And some countries are not worth hiring in because they want double just for the taxes. And in some countries, it's absolutely worth hiring in, but do not call them employees, call them contractors, and make sure you check these 3 boxes. And so those are the issues that you have to navigate. And those issues can be codified. They can be codified. And the risk to the codification, of course, is legislative changes. But that's actually getting much, much, much easier to handle with LLMs. I am extraordinarily impressed with AI's ability to interpret and action legislative documents. And the key is to protect yourself from hallucination. And the way to do that is to have 2 entirely different LLMs do the same task and then find out where they disagree. And generally speaking, that's a hallucination from one or the other. And if you do that, you end up with a work product, the propensity for error of which I think is lower than a human attorney. And so I actually think you're safer putting stuff like that through an LLM and then asking your attorney, or asking your attorney and putting it through an LLM, depending on how petulant you want to be. But if you do that stuff, then, you kind of find yourself in a position of being able to hire nationally with relative ease.
Yeah, I am surprised. So half the people listening right now are like, yes, Kyle, that's awesome, because we're SQL guys and Airtable sounds awesome because that's what we want to go do, and we want to control our stack and do all those things. Then you've got probably the payroll people that listen are like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
They would never even try to tackle that without a employer of record, a deal, a rippling. There's all these guys jumping up because this is such a a real thing. And it's not necessarily companies like yours right now. Everyone is doing this more and more often, right? Where they are hiring internationally. It's just not, I mean, you could have a small business here in Omaha, Nebraska, who may have a contractor in Hungary or some other city. It's just becoming a more real thing where everybody's having to deal with all of these rules, problems. And to hear you say that you've kind of dealt with it with a homegrown system is going to open people's eyes, I think.
And I wouldn't recommend it, to be honest with you. Like, I think if you're, mom, pa kettle, I mean, I own a staffing agency. It's what we do. I've got 100 trained EAs. And so I'm able to spread the cost of that infrastructure across every single one
Right.
of them. Yeah, I think most people should probably have an out-of-box solution, or a consultant that handles those things. I don't think this is a worthy of bespoke anything unless you're actually in the labor business.
Awesome, because we just saved the potential sponsorship with Rippling deal or a GP right there.
That's right. So go use those people for damn sure. If you've got a dozen or so employees around the world that you want to employ, absolutely. They didn't work for us for that reason, because I've got 100 and there's an exception to every rule. And, I ended up being able to do it a little bit more efficiently myself.
Oh, I'm sure. And you had done it before, right? So Pareto was not your first rodeo, right? With
No, well, and to that
Solutions Edge, you
point,
had a similar setup.
yeah, so Solutions 8, we had 80 employees, 6 were in the United States, the rest were in the rest of the world. And what was interesting is this thesis that I've offered you, it's the same one that we use at Pareto, we had at Solutions 8. I had an international employment attorney then too, different attorney, interestingly, but the guy I've got now has the same thinking, same paradigm. Solutions 8 went through an exit with a SoftBank-backed entity and Goldman Sachs trained due diligence bankers. So everything I shared went through 9 months of due diligence, overview, oversight, check boxes, and passed the sniff test without a question. So I'm not telling you that Goldman Sachs is the gold standard, but I'm pretty sure they are. As far as those things are concerned, and an entity like that wouldn't assume any amount of risk as far as those things are concerned. And so, I mean, if it's good enough for them, I guess is what I'm saying.
I use the same gold standard. So I do work periodically through my company for PricewaterhouseCoopers, and I tell clients, like, if I can get through their background, I think you're all right.
Yeah, I mean, if those eggheads can't catch it, then it can't be caught, at that point, or if it's an act of God.
Yes. So I didn't intend to ask this question during the actual interview, but hey, let's go for it. We can cut it if necessary. So my feeling, and I know this is not a political show, but hey, let's live on the edge a little bit. Do you believe that as more and more, because I'm looking at like Upwork and all these different platforms, I'm so surprised because anytime, especially governments, see a big pile of money, they want to go grab it. I'm very surprised that they've left this kind of virtual offshoring alone, like where they haven't imposed of, okay, you're offshoring to India or the Philippines. Guess what? When you pay these people, you're paying them an extra 15%, and that's coming to the government coffers.
Yeah, they do a little. So, and it's starting more and more. We just got a notification from, I forget who, TransferWise, that there's some necessary fee that Congress just agreed is, it was some pig fat added to some bill somewhere. And it's the thing about it, Troy, that's really interesting. And this is how they do everything. It's how they did income tax, is it's really small. It's like $1. They're like, you're going to have to pay $1 every time you transfer, any amount of money to these countries. And that dollar, is going to become it's going to move from $1 to 1%, and then from 1% to 3%, 3% to 10%. And then they're going to do what they always do. And that's just life. And it's the cost of doing business. And to be frank, it doesn't scare me, because it's, where rising tides float all ships. The same is true with anything that could be the negative cost of goods. It's not like there are businesses that will escape that, hit to the arbitrage factor. And so sadly, that's the type of thing that just gets passed on to the end client, the end customer. It's like a credit card fee. Um, but I fully expect the government to start, penalizing, especially given this particular regime and some of their thinkings on things. Um, and I don't think that stops anything.
Well, there's too much arbitrage, right? So
Yeah.
as minimum wage has gone up, and we don't have to get into minimum wage in general, but now the arbitrage is even better because now I can't touch somebody domestically for under 15, 20 bucks an hour, and I'm still paying 8 in the Philippines or something in that range, 5 to 8 somewhere else. So now the arbitrage actually got better.
Well, and you ready to get canceled? Let me just
Yes,
dance around this, Troy, and then we'll see how well I do or how many people I offend horribly. I'm going to say some things first. I'm going to protect myself a little bit. I'm a welfare baby. I was raised by a blind single mother on Social Security disability in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And what's really interesting about welfare babies is they're really trust fund babies. I was cared for and funded by the U.S. government Social Security office, right? I was fed, clothed, housed, educated. I'm so grateful to be here. Lucky to be an American. Grateful to have been born on this side of the arbitrary line. And hopefully that's enough lip service. Here's why I started that way. I really do love this country. And we won. We did it. We did the thing that a country probably should do, which is put ourselves in a position to where our citizenry, and this is the part that's going to hurt, doesn't really need to worry. You don't starve in this country. Can things be hard? Can you have a harder life than somebody else? Sure. But poverty here is such a subjective definition. And what that means is there's a byproduct to that. Are there extraordinarily talented people here? Yeah, absolutely. But they go work for Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Apple, Facebook, or they go into business for themselves because we've made entrepreneurship so easy. What you and I are left with as small business owners are the leftovers. And they're not bad people, but they're not people who work is a priority for. So I've got a cousin like this who I love to death, dearly and deeply. He had a job working at a call center for $120,000 a year plus bonuses. At a freaking call center, dude. At a call center. He's a supervisor at a call center making $120 a year plus bonus. And he didn't like to work. He likes to call. He's a good dad. He's a good husband. He likes to, barbecue on the weekend, but work is it's 7th on his list. I can't afford that labor pool. So even if you can afford the $20 to $25 that an employee is going to cost you entry level here, the odds of them being a peak performer are literal zero. And I hear it all the time from my peers. Like, it's so hard to find good help these days. And it's like, well, you're fishing in the wrong pond. Because if you pay take arbitrage off the table. If God came to earth and said you have to pay every human equal, I'd still be going offshore or near shore. Because the red, white, and blues, dude, they don't need to do a damn thing. You tell a kid fresh out of college, take out the trash or clean the toilet, and they're going to tell you where to stick your plunger, right? But I go take somebody from the Philippines, India, Eastern Europe, North Africa, Latin America, and they're grateful for the opportunity. So say what you want to say about stealing American jobs, but I have employed on every continent and in most viable countries. And my experience with the American labor force is if I'm dealing with an entrepreneur or a freelancer or a business owner, they're extraordinary. If I'm dealing with an employee, I get bullshit questions like, what's my title? Why doesn't there more PTO? I had a kid start and 2 weeks later tell me, not ask me, he's going to Paris for a couple of weeks. I had a gal tell me that she was going to be working remote in the Amazon with no internet. Like, I've had the worst experiences of my employer life domestically. And then I go offshore and I find miracles. And at the risk of being overly hyperbolic or even soapboxing, if you want hardworking people, go to where they're hungry and then feed them really well. I pay more than they'd ever make domestically, most of the time by many multiples. I let them work from home on a semi-flexible schedule doing meaningful work. And in most of the world, that's very unusual. It's very unusual. And they're extraordinarily grateful. And when I talk about this on podcasts, I get people screaming exploitation. And I'm like, I'm paying more than they could ever make at home. So explain to me how that's exploitation. I just go to where there's a symbiotic relationship. It's win-win. You know, if I wasn't there, they'd be making literally half. I had a young man working for me at Solutions 8 who was making 9 times what his peers were making. The average Google Ads specialist was making $500 a month at the time. I used to steal Google's people. They had 3 offices in India. He was one of the Google specialists, hit his ceiling. He's one of the brightest in the world, brightest I've ever met. He's making $4,500 a month when I sold Solutions 8. From $500 a month, imagine making 9 times what your peers make. He bought his parents the first home they ever lived in, got himself married, which in India is a very expensive endeavor, bought himself a motorcycle. You know, I mean, he's rich. And he managed my biggest client, which is a publicly traded pet supplement company who paid me $54,000 a month. And he had a slate of 20 other clients. So that mathed really well. He got 9 times what he could ever make at home. And I got one of the greatest Google Ads minds that's ever existed because I was willing to pay like that. So I say, go to where there is not a plethora of opportunity, because this really is the land of opportunity. And that doesn't help you and me, because we're not the opportunity. We're not an aspirational opportunity to a kid who just graduated from, it doesn't matter, NAU or Stanford. It doesn't matter. They want to go work for a publicly traded company, or a company giving stock options is going to make them $1 million overnight, or go into business for themselves, or get a job where they can punch the clock. And I'm not the first 3, and I don't want the 4th. But if I go to Bogota, Colombia, dude, people are crawling over themselves to work for me. Them working for a US company getting paid in the US dollars, like a kid here getting a job at Google. It's the same distance traveled. It's still like, oh my God, I can't believe this happened. How lucky could I possibly be? And then you end up with what I term as Pareto Talent, which are the 80-20. So the 20% of people that do 80% of the work. And it's the reason my organizations have been so uncharacteristically successful. When I sold Solutions 8, I had 40% margins in an industry that aims at 15% as a high watermark. It's not because I'm magic. It's because I had better people. So hopefully I haven't said anything that offends you.
You know, we will have to, because I'm about ready to say some things that I may have to edit. So if I'm in there cutting, we'll figure it out. But I've got someone who's I've worked with, and I've given him contract work over 5 or 6 years. I'm in the Oracle ecosystem with my business, HCM Cloud Consultants. And so Oracle has just offshored a lot of things. A lot of the talent is in India. It's just, at this point, it is what it is. There's certain things that a lot of those people know that's where you have to go get that talent. But, you know, you can still get it at I'll say a better price. And so my guy likes to do ultra marathons. And matter of fact, this week, I believe, is in the Himalayas between 3,000 and 6,000 feet, doing a crazy race that I would never do in a million years. And I asked him, I was like, oh, geez, you do these ultra marathons. I was like, you should get a sponsor. And he said, well, you're my sponsor. I'm like, oh, I never really thought about that. That what I pay him, that extra money is probably paying for him to do the travel and, you know, do these things that he loves to do. Yeah. Those are things you really don't think about, like how much of an impact that can make for.
Oh, dude, it's huge. So if you take, you know, I was raised by a single mom, as I mentioned, and if you take a single mom in Albuquerque, New Mexico, who goes blind, my mom went blind. My mom goes to the Social Security office. She applies for Social Security, and then the Social Security office pays her whatever it is. It wasn't a lot, but it fed us. If you're in, I don't care, Quito, Ecuador, there is no Social Security office. So you take that same single mom and you let her work from home on a semi-flexible schedule, and you pay her more than she'd ever make domestically. That has anthropological significance. When mom is home, teen pregnancy drops, teen drug use drops, teen gang involvement drops, right? Like that is massive. It's huge. And then there's a ripple effect throughout the entire community when you increase somebody's spending power. So hiring internationally and then doing so in a way that the people do this wrong. They're like, oh, I tried outsourcing and it didn't work. And then you dig into their operation and they're screenshotting desktops and making people ask when they pee, and they're paying them peanuts. And then they're giving them, you know, garbage data entry jobs, or I need you to make 500 cold calls a day. It's like, what human in the world could function in this environment? You know, but if you treat them really well, they're not used to that, man. I can't tell you, especially like India and Pakistan are notorious for this. You talk to those employees, and the amount of times employers arbitrarily withhold pay is shocking. It's devastating. It's so sad. And so I pay earlier on time. I am a freaking clock. And the thing about it too is when you hire somebody from India or Pakistan, it's not unusual for them to have 3 full-time jobs at once. And everybody gets mad at that. They're like, oh, I found out that my Pakistani freelancer was screwing me. And it's like, well, the poor guy for the last 20 years has been screwed by his employers, and he never knows which one isn't going to pay him. Right. So he's hedging his bets. But if you can just stick with it long enough to earn their trust and for them to realize like, oh man, Troy's a man of his word. He's going to watch how quickly they drop that and they go all in on you. So there's a little bit of, kind of the chicken and egg scenario where you got to be a good employer before you're going to get good employees. But once you really earn people's trust, uh, when I sold Solutions A, this still happens actually, because I still see the YouTube comments. Dude, I had people coming out of the woodwork to come work for us. And it's because everybody knew. Everybody knew that we were the place to work. And I don't think that's hard to do. Far too many organizations are fighting to be the worst. I read job postings now and they blow my mind. You open up Monster or Indeed or Jobbing, it doesn't matter, and read what people say. It's always some idiot saying you must comply with all rules and regulations, and if you don't, you will be publicly flogged. Like that's the equivalent of that's their sales letter to come work here. And it's not the minority, it's 51% or more. Like I read these things and I'm like, who in their right mind would want to spend their life? Because they're spending more time with you, Mr. or Mrs. Employer, than they will ever spend with their children, to the tune of probably 4x. If I get 2 hours with my kids a day, that's a really, really good day. I mean, focused attention. I'm not talking about getting breakfast, putting shoes on, getting whatever. If I get 2 hours with my kids a day, that's a great day. And I got to spend 8 hours with you. And for people to not really spend time thinking about how they're going to make their sandbox the best, most effective, most fun, most advantageous, most synergistic, kindest, most loving, it's like, well, what are you doing here? Of course people are not performing the way that you want them to perform. You've effectively built a prison. I had 20 some odd jobs before I launched my business, all garbage jobs. I worked at call centers. I worked at a grocery store. I worked at an amusement park. I worked at McDonald's. And the number of employers that really looked at employees as an asset in my mind was a nominal amount. And the few that did, dude, I mean, people would lie down in traffic for those folks. So I actually think that's pretty easy to do, to be honest with you. It doesn't take a miracle. You don't have to move mountains. It's just being intentional and stop making it combative. Anyway, that all got really preachy. I'm sorry.
No, that's right. Because I want to get into your book, Hire, and it's at thehirebook.com, where you can get a free copy. That Kasim will have that linked in the show notes. But I want to get into that because there's some real tactical things that people can use, I think, if they want to go hire their own executive assistants, or they can probably translate this to the corporate world as well. And I think back to when we're talking about a good work life is Daniel Pink's book. I can't remember what the name of it was, autonomy over task, time, and team, right? The more you can push that sort of thing down to your employers, and you talk about that a bit in the book of, these people that you are bringing in are creative, interesting people that can do a lot of things if you give them the chance and the ability. So I want to dig into number one, geographically. Where are you tending to find these people? I feel like there's been a big push over the last 3 to 5 years to move more to the same time zone. If we're talking about, getting resources to help in the United States down to South America. Is that where you're finding a lot of your talent at this point, or that's still a hodgepodge across the globe?
No, well, Pareto is 100% in Latin America. We've big concentration in Argentina, although the arbitrage has been hurt there because of the weakening US dollar. That capitalist guy did a pretty good job, actually. Big footprint in Argentina, Colombia, breaking into Ecuador, Lima, Peru, and then, some smattering Nicaragua, Uruguay, I think. I like Latin America for a lot of reasons.
Let's talk about the book and just some of the quick frameworks. I know we're about out of time. So let's, number one, tell everybody where they can get it, because this thing is free. I think it's going to help, again, if you are hiring a virtual assistant, but it's about 100, 115 pages. You can go out
super accessible.
Yeah,
I mean, you're going to get through it in a day. Yeah. And thehirebook.com, you can have the audiobook for free, the book for free, the checklist, the worksheet, all the templates. And it's step by step. So what I do is I talk to you about, number one is your job posting, which I think should be a sales letter. And I talk about the perfect job posting that I've split tested over thousands of iterations in 20 years. And after the job posting, I talk about what I call fly traps. And fly traps are, if you're paying more than anybody else is willing to pay in a particular market, which is the prerequisite, by the way, So, when you go to the Philippines, people say, oh, you can get a Filipino EA for $500. And then what entrepreneurs do, because we're taught to hire people like commodities, is they try to get one for $499. It's like, well, how about pay $1,500 and then see what happens? So can you get an employee in Latin America for $2,000? Sure. Try paying 3, see what happens. I have a literal college professor working for me right now. He's my personal CFO. He manages the finances of my entire portfolio. Brilliant, brilliant human. And I'm not going to try to get that guy for the bottom of the barrel. So go to these markets, and it's easy to figure out what other people are paying because you just troll the job boards. Pay more than anybody's willing to pay domestically. Be a fun place to work. But then what happens is you get inundated. You have more applications than you'll ever know what to do with. So I do what I call fly traps. I actually just had an applicant complain about this to me. And everything he said in his complaint was exactly why I do it. It was so funny. He's like, if you have this many steps in your hiring process, people are going to drop off. And I'm like, I do know that. Yeah, it's exactly what I want, dude. Like, gold star to you.
Right.
So you in the fly traps, some of my fly traps are actually a little finicky. Like, for example, I have everybody do a paid trial project before I'll do an interview. So, people apply. The subject line has to read. I actually read the instructions. There's 5 or 6 instructions, which are not insignificant. One of them, for example, might be send me a link to your resume in a PDF format with this naming convention. Do I care that it's a link and an attachment? No. Do I care that it's PDF, not Word? No. I want to know you can stop and follow instructions. So basic instructions like that. Anybody who doesn't follow it gets filtered out. For those that do, we filter based off of who we think might potentially be a fit. I generally never filter on experience and education because I, to be frank, don't believe that should be a filter any longer. I hire for will and train for skill unless I need a very, 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 very specific skill, something like Ruby on Rails or heart surgery. And then once I have my short list, I say, hey, Troy, thanks so much for applying. I really appreciate you. I'd love to pay you in advance to do a trial project. I've been hiring people long enough to know that I'm not going to be able to interview you until we work together. And then I choose an amount that's applicable for the market. So in the Philippines, $20 for 2 hours is great. In Latin America, you might want to pay 40. But I'll say, how's $40 for 2 hours sound? If that works for you, send me your PayPal and I'll pay you in advance. I pay them. They give me the PayPal. I pay them in advance. I don't follow up. And I wait to see who comes to me and says, hey, where's the project? And the number of people that just ghost me is often shocking. And you think, well, gosh, I just lost my $40. Yeah, best $40 you've ever spent. You could have hired that person. Sometimes I'll get somebody email me a month later saying, hey, you sent me money and never sent me a project. And I'm like, yeah, I'm glad I didn't give you a job.
Right.
A guy that I'm going to have to manage for the rest of my life. So for the people that do follow up, I'll send them a project and I make sure the projects are dynamite. And the book goes through all those. I probably have 150 different fly traps. But by the time somebody goes through this process, you have the greatest talent you're ever going to hire in your entire life. And now it's up to you to manage them properly and appropriately, which is what my next book is about. It's called Delegate. But that's the pitch, man. That's the book. I want to be the world authority in hiring, and I hope that people find it valuable.
Well, I did. And it's, I've listened to Noah Kagan, and Tim Ferriss has some similar ideas around, setting that little task, right? And I think the challenge legislatively for bigger corporation is that would be incredibly valuable because it's really tough in even a video interview to really understand how this person's going to behave. But to be able to give them some sort of task like that will do more filtering than any video interviewing would ever do.
Without question. Yeah. But people have made interviewing an art form. Everybody's good at it. They're all going to look good on an interview. And interestingly, the ones that don't look good sometimes are your best employees. Especially in this world where everybody, myself included, is a little autistic. Like, why are we going to filter them out based off an arbitrary criteria? Like, are you hiring them to interview for a living? Is that part of the job?
Right.
Or is it okay if they're a little awkward,
Absolutely. So what I got out of the book is, number one, it's an easy read. I'd say 115 pages. What I really liked is he really lays out like the 7-step process that he goes through. And I think people will see some similarities to their current processes, but a little bit of a different flavor and some other ideas that maybe they never thought about. I would have never thought about offering people $40 and then filtering them out by who doesn't even respond. That is an excellent tip. So, all right. So we'll have this in the show notes, but it is The Hire Book, TheHirebook.com, thehirebook.com. You can go there and get your free copy. I think just ask for your email. And then Kasim's company is Pareto, like Pareto's Law, ParetoTalent.com. Hey, Kasim, I really appreciate you doing this. I think Kasim's one of the best follows on LinkedIn that's out there. So I will also link his LinkedIn profile out there. Just incredible stuff, a great thinker in general. And before we sign out, anything else you want to leave the HRIS Careers community with?
I appreciate you having me on, Troy. Thank you.
For the rest of the HRIS Careers community, we'll talk to y'all later.